order. Perhaps we'll start off with approval of the agenda, please, for the meeting here.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Medlock, the seconder.
Second.
Councillor Dial seconded. All those in favor? Contrary. Motion carries. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held December 12th. Councillor Erickson moving, a seconder, please. Councillor Smith, second. Questions or comments pertaining to the minutes? All those in favor? That's right. Motion carries. Thank you. So we're fortunate to have with us some key movers and shakers from two organizations. And we are going to start off with the Habitat for Humanity delegation. And welcome. I will have to get you to self-introduce because we had a very brief meeting and I'm bad with names tonight.
Do I need to press on this or?
Sure, yeah.
Stand and talk?
Pressing would be good. Press on the button there and then you get a little extra.
Okay.
Should be on.
Side button first.
Side button first, you see
Okay,
guys? This is the, just hit that in.
There you go.
Now
Perfect.
on. Now
Tailor
on.
made.
Thank you. I'm Steve Dutton. I'm chair of Habitat for Humanity. Thank you to Mayor and Council for giving us this slot and staff for arranging it for us. As chair of Habitat, I and all board members across Canada, elected board members, are volunteers. We at Habitat run a program called Restore. We just opened one up in Chilliwack. We have one in Abbotsford, and basically what we have with that is we earn enough money off of it basically to pay all the staff that we have in order to do the work we have to do. And so staff will be dealing with our staff on the remote for the most part, but I think it's important to, first of all, introduce you that we're here. I'm here as a volunteer to say what we're doing and where we're going. So with Habitat, what we do is we provide a house, not for free, but we provide houses for 500 hours work. They do their own paperwork, and basically they get into the house for 30% of their income. And we pay out of that any strata fees and any taxes before we amortize. And the amortization is at 0%. So essentially, they're not getting free, they have to work hard to get in. They are owners when they get into their home, which is the key. And but with Habitat, what we're doing is we're part of the continuum of affordability in housing, and that is because we're at the top end of it, but we're taking people out of affordable housing and putting into an ownership position. It's a long-term program. It takes about 15 years before they start moving their equity or being able to support with their equity. If they want to leave early, they get all their money back, net of the taxes and strata fees we paid. So the program, if someone in 7 years say they want to leave, there's a good chance they're leaving with a check for $50,000 to $70,000, enough to put a deposit on their dream home, and then we put another family into the home. Our biggest thing is finding land. Mission was very, very gracious. They found a piece of land for us for 19 units. We're going to be starting shortly, and they were kind enough to sell it to us for what they got it for many years ago on an expropriation or on a soft expropriation, and so for $175,000 they've given us land. We don't always get land for really good prices. We don't have to. One of the things we've worked hard at is building a base for the Fraser Valley affiliate. We have that behind us. We have banks that are coming to us instead of us going to them. They want to help us. We have, of course, we're just a conduit of the community around us. So every time we start a house, we get $40,000 or $50,000 worth of gifts from national programs and local programs. So we built probably the lowest, to a community, the lowest cost affordable house there is. Basically, every community, I think, needs us to a certain extent, looking after some of these younger families. It's a way into housing, and you probably haven't really seen it as bad as we've seen it in the Abbotsford area, the Mission area, and as you get into Vancouver. I have 2 lots over in Port Louis. Someone told me are worth 1.2 and 1.4 million each, and I'm looking at them saying, they can't be. They just can't be. These are lots, but they are. And so you kind of look at the whole picture and you realize this is a really necessary thing that we're doing. We went to BC Housing 2 years ago. We finally now have really unlimited funding from them to build, which is key. It's portable within our district, wherever we want to use it. In BC, actually, we have Hope as part of our district, so that's where we'll use it. So we've got a program set up. We just need help finding the land. And we would like to be in Hope for at least 4 units, and we'd like to do that as soon as possible. And if it's that successful, we would like to, continue to come back every year and do some more. It's a program where if the family is making $13 an hour and they have a history at work in the family, they can afford our house. So it's quite an incredible thing. Our families pay, about $600 a month, and that covers everything. If at the lowest end, we do not finance or do this program for people that could afford to buy their own. We guide them other ways. So these are really people that are hard to find in your community, believe it or not, because they're not the ones complaining. They're just working hard and trying to feed their family. Some of the statistics are our families use food banks almost not at all once they're in, because they've all of a sudden got their home together, and we don't just throw them at that. They go through some training on how to be owners. I mean, it's an incredible program, which I don't have enough time to explain in great detail tonight. But when we put 4 families in here that we're barely making your community into a home like this, it will make a difference even in Hope. And the more we do in a community, we can make a difference in the school districts. There's just a huge amount of things that we can really make a difference on. And so that's what we try and do. And so we partner with any community that we have in any way in order to even get one home. So I don't know if Hope has land or doesn't have land, or can direct staff to help us, council, if you direct staff to help us in any way we can. We'll come in, and it will be Hope's bill. It won't be us, but we know how to gather it together and make it work for your families. We have a little short video. It's done by another affiliate. They do it a little different than us, but it gives you, in 4 minutes, it really gives you a picture of what we do.
Sounds good.
If it works.
The projector takes a while to get in the mood, so I'd like to take a minute or two here to do its thing.
We had a big gala in Abbotsford, and we brought in Chris Hadfield, and everything worked great before. Everything worked great for the first session, and we got into the main gala, and and the video would not. There's nothing they could do to talk it to work.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's quite funny.
Countries around the world, but what you may not know is that we also build homes right in your community. Many of us don't realize that 1 in every 8 families are challenged with the decision to pay rent or put food on the table. Habitat for Humanity builds homes and hope for families in need across Canada. We want everyone to have a safe, decent, and affordable place to live, and we firmly believe that home ownership breaks the cycle of poverty. Here's how our program works. First, we identify families in need and prepare them to be successful homeowners. Our hardworking families serve the community in many capacities. Each one just needs a hand up out of the cycle of living from paycheck to paycheck. Next, we partner with the community to acquire land through donations from municipalities, developers, and individuals. As a charity, we rely 100% on the generosity of donors to make our homes possible, including donations of cash and building materials to construct our homes. Once the funds are raised, we strap on our work boots and hard hats and start building. We mobilize volunteers to build homes alongside of our partner families, nail by nail, wall by wall. Habitat volunteers come from all walks of life, but are joined by a passion to serve families. Some have never picked up a tool in their lives. Others are professional tradespeople. There's a place for every gently used building materials and home improvement items that are sold to the public. The Habitat program is a sustainable investment for today and the future. So pick up a hammer, pick up a phone, or visit our website to imagine our community's most valuable resource, people. Habitat for Humanity, building homes, building hope.
So that's why I play that after I speak. It's pretty much 4 minutes of telling us exactly what we do. We make a big difference in families' lives. When you take a child and you take them from a cycle of poverty, put them into a better house, and they are owners in their mind, you change your community. And that's why we're doing what we do. And we're looking forward now with our really unlimited funding that we have now set up, not just through the provincial government, through several sources. We've spent 2.5 years making sure we're ready to go now. And I am a builder personally. I build a lot of stuff. We are ready now to take on anything we can to help you in any way, even for one family. And we'll do it in partnership. We'll do it in partnership with other builders. We'll do whatever we have to in order to serve a family. Is there any questions at all? Usually a selection question.
I think we'll have a few here. I just wanted to thank you for coming to the council meeting to start with. Obviously, your organization is a blessing to many. It has a very good name because even people that haven't been the recipients of the help that you provide, I think it's one of those. It's like the Salvation Army. They have a good name, and same with Habitat for Humanity. They have the notoriety of being a blessing to other people, and certainly, I think we could probably look at seeing this program move to hope would be awesome, and that would be great because even in Hope, a lot of folks find new residence is very unaffordable, even with the slightly lower real estate prices we have here. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have a need here. We know that. We don't know how big that need is, but it may be larger than any of us know. Because as I say, these people aren't protesting. You don't hear from.
I'm sure the rest of council will have some good questions here, but before I forget, for folks that would like to get involved in your organization and volunteer their time and expertise to deal with, for the interim, maybe out-of-town programs in Chilliwack or Abbotsford or what have you, till you get going here, who would they contact?
Well, we have Christian here.
Me. Contact me.
Hello, Christian.
Christian wears the hat of volunteer coordinator right now. We have a couple others that are taking up that charge. But yes, he's heading that right now. And yeah, we love volunteers. I mean, this whole organization, although we have staff and we need staff, we need volunteers. And we always have room for someone. And there's just endless work to do in the organization, not just in Restore, but as we get into building, we're needing more specific volunteers for building. They seem to come along. And by the way, everything we do isn't free. We pay quite a few trades. This is actually good for your economy too, because we do pay some people. We get certain things donated, but we get to a certain point in the build, and the question is, you wait and let the family move in a year when you get the volunteer for that one place? No, you buy whatever you have to in order to move to the next thing. So our whole build process isn't done on a free basis. We take the gifts where we can get them, and we move through the system as quickly as we can, because our end goal is getting the family into home.
Yeah, sounds good. Councillor Medlock.
Thank you. I'm a bit familiar with the program. My family moved on back east. But, I guess, besides land, what other things can municipalities do to support you?
Well, the municipalities, Mission has been kind enough. They have a special fee that they charge every developer, which is a community charge fee. Doesn't really fit in any. I'm not sure they're allowed to charge it, but we as developers always pay it. Is that a nice way of putting it? Yeah. I tell them that every time as I pay them, just so it's not. This isn't news to them. And anyway, they give us that off. They give us DCCs off. We've been offered the same in other municipalities. DCCs are virtually non-existent for for Habitat. And just the staff, I mean, when we put something forward, there's a queue usually of how fast something can come through staff. The fact is, as I always say, you know, there's some organizations that, as a developer, I say this, not as my hat, there's some organizations that should go before me as a private developer. And I say that Habitat's one of them, that let's get it through, let's get into building as quickly as we can. So there is quite a few ways, and just your support. If you don't have land, when we bring a piece of land, get the answers back to us as quick as we can, and when we try and find land. Again, we don't need free land. We don't mind paying for land. Everything we get off builds more houses. So that's the way I look at it. So yeah, so there's a lot of ways as we move into this, since our staff will for sure reach out, and your staff have been great so far. They will reach out back, and we'll, I'm sure, come up with some good things.
Additional questions? Okay.
So what's the first step? Do you find clients in need, or do you find land, or how does it get the ball rolling?
That is, nothing's first in either of those areas. It's hard to find clients. So we're getting our base up. We have people that are doing that now.
Do they normally find you, I guess, is?
What we say is apply online at Habitat UFV,
Okay.
Upper Fraser Valley. And we ask them to do that because it screens them out really quickly if they don't qualify. You know, I mean, there are people that would love a Habitat house and they're making $100,000 a year. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We have much lower. In fact, BC Housing said as long as the people make less than $96,000, that's affordable now. And they said all over the province. They said all over the province. I said, really? You know, if you're not making $96,000, apparently it's. Our limit is right now 58, and we're looking at $65,000 at the max. But what we really want to do is serve families in the $27,400 to the $35,000 range. Unless they have a lot of kids, we can look at higher rate. You know, we're really looking for the families in need. And so we have a selection of people that are on that all the time right now. They haven't started up in Hope because we really need to identify land and have a good chance of getting some land before we get someone's hopes up. So right now, currently, and just for your information, we don't have anybody working down their 500 hours. That will start very shortly.
Thank you.
Sounds very good. Additional comments from council? Well, thank you, Mr. Dutton, and thank you, Christian, for coming. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. Take care.
Now, our next delegation, we have a couple of folks here. We have a gentleman who is no stranger to District of Hope Council meetings, Barclay Van-Ketley from the Fraser Valley Regional District, and then I believe a lady who has not yet been to a District of Hope meeting. You're missing out here, Ms. Newlove. So Rebecca Newlove, who is the Senior Transit Planner for BC Transit, and she is going to wow us with her presentation here, I'm assuming.
That's some introduction. Thank
Was
you
that
very
correct?
much.
Are you going to wow us with your presentation?
That's why I brought that up now. There we go. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And it's good to have Barclay here as well. So if there are really tough questions at the end by council, we'll be glad to pass over to Barclay for those. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on the transit service to Hope this evening. As mentioned, I'm Rebecca Newlove at BC Transit. I'm one of the senior planners who's responsible for planning the service between Agassiz and Hope. And we work with Barclay at the Fraser Valley Regional District on any of the transit service that we have in place at the moment that's linked with the regional district. So the main one is Route 11, which is the Agassiz-Harrison route. It goes from Chilliwack out to Agassiz and up to Harrison. So the purpose of this evening's presentation was to provide council with an update on the design of the service, which is due to be implemented in September of this year, mainly associated with the engagement process that we conducted at the end of last year, and to get your input into it and also to answer any questions that you may have at this stage. So I'll give a really quick background, an overview of the process and timeline, the engagement results, and then our updated service designs based on those engagement results that we received. and then the next steps. So as background, what we're looking at is a transit service that connects Hope to Agassiz and allows customers then to transfer onto the Route 11 Agassiz-Harrison service to connect onto Chilliwack, which opens up a wealth of opportunities because then you can then travel on the Chilliwack transit system and also connect on the Fraser Valley Express, which then goes onwards through Abbotsford to Langley and then opens up the doorway to Metro Vancouver as well. So this really does open up the Fraser Valley further and connects into the Lower Mainland, and ultimately, because we have a study going on at the minute to connect up through Squamish to Whistler, right the way through, depending upon how much time you have to travel on transit service. So in terms of the background for this, right from 2010 there was study and analysis work done by the Fraser Valley Regional District that identified this as an area of demand for transit. And then in 2011 and 12 we did a lot of work, engagement with the community in the Chilliwack area and the Fraser Valley area on the development of the Transit Future Plan. And again, we heard from the public and stakeholders that there would be a desire and a demand for transit service out to Hope. And that document, the Transit Future Plan, was approved in 2013 by Chilliwack Council and by the BC Transit Board, and was also endorsed by the Fraser Valley Regional District Board. And one of the recommendations that came out of it was to do a detailed feasibility study for this transit service to Hope. And that was completed in 2013. And although it did then go to certainly Council and the Board, we did have a period of rationalisation in 2014 and 15 where we didn't have expansion budget to be able to move out with new service at the province. And that has come back on the table as of this year. So the announcement was made last year that expansion funds will be available as of this year. And so we updated the transit feasibility study and updated the costs, given that the time had moved on. Opened up a couple of different options that made it a little bit more cost effective, certainly for funding partners. And that was then approved in 2016, and an MOU was signed by the Fraser Valley Regional District to request that the province include this in their budget for implementation this year. Now the provincial budget is just being considered at the moment, and we're hoping that that goes through for approval in February, and so we'll get a good understanding of whether the provincial funding for that is available as of next month. So the next stage was really to design the service in detail. So we set up the Hope Steering Committee, the Transit Steering Committee. It had members of all of the funding partners, so ourselves, the Fraser Valley Regional District, the District of Hope, so John sits on that committee. We have advisory members on that committee as well, so the District of Kent, because of the connection into Route 11, MOTI, because we're obviously providing service on MOTI right-of-way and roads. And First Canada are our current operating company, and so obviously they bring a wealth of knowledge to the table in terms of the operators and an understanding of being able to operate the service as well. And then we have a suite of key stakeholders also who were engaged as part of that engagement process at the end of last year. City of Chilliwack, Fraser Health, Seabird Island Band, and various other First Nations along Highway 7, amongst others. And we put a timeline together in terms of designing the service and implementing it. So the committee was set up in fall of last year. We had our first meetings to design the route and the schedule options, where the transit stops would be, what the engagement process would look like, who would be engaged. Had our engagement at the end of last year in December, and looking at infrastructure requirements, looking at funding, fare structure options, and bringing those forward now for input and finalisation, so that by March we nail it all down, ready to then plan the rider's guide, design the rider's guide, and have everything in place by September of this year. So we'd hope to go back out to the public once everything is designed and finalised to raise awareness about this service, let them know when it's coming into service, the rider's guide, the schedule options that are available, and the routing. So in terms of the engagement that we did at the end of last year, the purpose of the engagement is really to get really good feedback from your community and those potential riders as to whether the routing is correct, whether we needed to tweak the routing, whether the schedule options were right, whether the trip times needed changing, and be able to take that feedback and change the routing and the schedule options so that it works for your community and is successful when it's put into implementation. And the idea is to reach as many of the community members as possible, so we have a website up in place. We did advertising and media and newspaper ads. We did a survey online, in hard copy at the open house events, on board the Route 11 buses to try and raise awareness and get feedback from existing riders. We did 4 open houses. One was an event on an evening here. Then we brought a vicinity bus, which is the bus that would be providing the service in September, and brought it out to the rec centre and the library on a busy morning during one of their good programme sessions. We went to the secondary school, a great suggestion from one of the public members, so we went to the secondary school at lunchtime and spoke to a lot of the children during their lunch break. We went to Save on Foods on a Friday afternoon, which is apparently their busiest time of the week, and tried to get feedback from people who may not have heard about or necessarily be interested in the transit service, but try and get them on board, talk to them about it, would they be interested, what would their feedback be. And then we had a list of stakeholders and First Nation groups, so I certainly dropped in at a lot of the First Nation offices on Highway 7 when we were out with the engagement, emailed a lot of stakeholder groups, we had our operator drop in on a lot of them during the day of engagement and really try and get feedback from them as well, and certainly the existing operators for First Canada. So this is the engagement route option that we presented to the public to get their feedback. The blue line is the existing route, which is Route 11 from Chilliwack through Agassiz that goes up to Harrison Hot Springs. And then the green line shows the new routing that would connect in Agassiz, go along Highway 7 up to Hope, and then the short loop around Hope, which is outlined in more detail here. So along Park, 6th Avenue, Wallace and 3rd Avenue, basically doing a circle to pick people up that have come to this downtown call and take them back to Agassiz for their travel onwards. And the routing in Agassiz is just a short loop to connect into the main bus stop location on Pioneer to that Route 11. And these are the schedule options we presented. So the schedule options and the routing were based on a lot of the feedback we got through the Transit Future Plan and the feasibility study process. And so that was targeted very much at getting people into Chilliwack for school start times, university start times and employment start times, and then back later in the afternoon. And it does therefore mean that there was quite a considerable amount of the day that people would have to spend in Chilliwack. But it doesn't preclude people, and certainly presents the option for anyone that would like to travel for recreation purposes or shopping, hospital appointments, or want to travel onwards, perhaps to Abbotsford or beyond, for a day trip. So the engagement results, we had a really good feedback, so many thanks to staff and your community. We had over 400 survey responses, which is really quite phenomenal for a community of this size, so we were delighted with the response. Over 62% of those responses were from Hope, as expected, quite a few from Chilliwack and Agassiz and Harrison, and others were from further beyond Vancouver, etc. In terms of support, the potential future use of the Hope Transit Service, there was really good feedback in terms of supporting this transit service as we expected from the previous engagement. About 14% would use it 5+ days per week, and 12% 3 to 4 days per week, 8% 1 to 2 days per week, and then 32% a few times per month. So you're getting over half of those respondents saying they would use it quite regularly. And then for the trip purpose, what we noted was actually the majority of the trip purpose that respondents indicated would be their main purpose for travel was social and recreation. Rather than employment, it was social recreation, shopping and errands, and then following that it was work, or certainly for school or college. So in terms of what we heard from the many comments we received, there were really 3 key areas of focus. Obviously full support, but the first key area was a real high demand for service to Silver Creek. We'd shown a very short loop around Hope, showing this as an inter-regional connector service, but there was lots of demand for service to Silver Creek, to Carqua Lake, and then local routing around Hope, so the recreation centre, the library, the hospital, Save on Foods, etc. And then there were other comments as well. Could we have more direct service along Highway 1 just straight to Chilliwack? Which had kind of been rolled out from our feasibility study. Serve the First Nations on Highway 7, we're certainly engaging them through this process, so that opportunity is certainly still there. And then another key area was mid-morning and mid-afternoon trips. So noting that If you just want to go for lunch with friends or maybe recreate, you want to go to a rec centre in Chilliwack on the afternoon, that you'd have to spend the entire day there with the schedule options that were presented. And then connections to an early IVX service and evening service as well. So we took this feedback and we designed a potential alternative route option around Hope, which would be to serve both Cartquell Lake and Silver Creek. And through this route you can see that you'd obviously also be able to, I don't know if there's a pointer here, but also be able to serve the recreation and library complex, and then the hospital also, and then save on foods also. So you kind of cover off all of the requests in this one alternative route option. Now this route option, I don't know if it's in the next slide, does require additional hours. So that smaller route option, option 1, this short loop, we're looking at 4 return trips on weekday and Saturday. It requires 2 buses. Again, this was presented in the feasibility study, so there's no change there. The short loop requires 2,000 annual hours a year, whereas that longer loop requires an extra 350 annual hours. And in terms of costs, if you're just thinking about your local share of costs, you basically effectively go from about $150,000 to $164,000. So it's about $14,000 a year additional. So at the moment we have those 2 options still on the table, and recognising that if there are those in some of the extended areas of Hope that don't currently have access to a vehicle to be able to get into Hope to access transit, then this would certainly be a benefit to them. It may also, side positive could be that it may also be used as a local route, so that people aren't necessarily taking it all the way to Chilliwack, but they may actually be hopping on in Silver Creek, for instance, just to get to the centre of Hope. So there's an alternative potential option there. In terms of our provincial budget, one thing to note is that we only included sufficient hours in budget in our request to the province for that short loop. It was back in the summer of last year before we did this engagement. And so our finance team are aware that we have this alternative request at the table, but obviously depending upon the outcome of the provincial budget results in February, we'll know whether that's possible or not, should council want to move forwards with this extended route. The benefits of the short route is it's slightly less cost. One other thing to note is that it does not cross the rail track, and crossing a rail track can cause us some issues in terms of reliability, as the bus has to wait and the scheduled time ticks by whilst the train keeps going. Obviously we've got crossings in other places in the Fraser Valley and we have to accommodate that, and so it's whether the benefits of serving these additional communities outweigh those disadvantages. And the disadvantages of this short route, which are obviously the advantages of the longer route, are the fact that the longer route serves these additional communities, these key destination points within Hope, and it addresses the public feedback responses that we received in late last year. In terms of the schedule redesign, we did do a second option. Now this first option's been changed because this is relating to the longer route. But we did do a second option that took people into Chilliwack or via Agassiz later in the day. So they're accessing Chilliwack more like 10:30, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the day, rather than for an 8:30, 9 a.m. School or work start time. The disadvantages of moving forwards with this option are that you do preclude anyone that is wanting to use the service for employment or for a school option moving forwards. We are doing some engagement with Seabird Island, and obviously they have the college there. We're engaging them tomorrow and we're starting to have that conversation with them. So I feel that the responses that we get from them may help with this decision about which schedule option we could move forwards with, if there is a desire for them to partake in the service, and if their school times limit us moving to an option that's later in the day. So these 2 options are certainly still on the table for input from yourselves and then from other stakeholders as we move forwards to make a recommendation. So the next steps are this engagement with some of the First Nations, budget approval in February, then we'd finalise the route option and the schedule. At the same time we do have a fare structure being finalised, but it's looking at this area of the region as a whole, so it's for the Chilliwack service, the Agassiz Harrison service, and then it would give an indication of what the fare charges would be for Hope. And then the implementation plan would be developed, outlining all of the various detailed pieces of information like the final route, the final schedule, where the bus stops would be located and what infrastructure would be required, and which tends to be the responsibility of the local authority if it's within their jurisdiction, or the MOTI if it's on highways. And then that fare strategy, and then a marketing strategy to raise awareness with the public and encourage people to use it come September. And then we have an implementation MOU signed with the FURD, and then it goes into service September of this year. And this is just a very detailed timeline showing how those various elements work throughout the rest of this year. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, take any feedback from you on the information we've presented to date, and certainly Barclay is here also for any questions as they relate to the regional district, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Certainly, I think a service that a lot of people are looking forward to in the community, and it's something that's been discussed for a while, and obviously a special thank you to Mr. Forlowski, our CAO, for all the good work he's been doing in dialoguing with the regional district and yourself with Piece of Transit. So, very much appreciated. Questions from council? Councilor Duggan.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, of the 400 respondents, do we know where they lived in the community? Like the portion that lived in Silver Creek, the respondents, to Cockrell Lake, to Hope. Do you?
We did ask that data, so we do have that level of data, and we did get quite a lot of respondents who were in Silver Creek particularly, less so on Cockrell Lake, and I don't have those responses with me. I don't think we went into that detail in the report, but it did obviously then be a good indication of why we were getting that feedback.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Good question. Additional questions? Councillor Erickson, Councillor Miller.
This is an ignorant question, but because I don't know how the funding goes on this, so maybe, so if the town district pays $164,000 a year, the fees that are paid by the riders, does that reduce our fees, or does that go to BC Transit?
I'm just going to move back a couple of slides. All of the funding that comes in from revenue, so the fares that are paid by the public, go to offset the local share. So what this calculation though has already taken into account is we've estimated that we get about 6,500 rides a year. That's an estimation based on ridership that's currently on the Agassiz Harrison route, and then we've times it by 60%, assuming that you have about 60% less. And it's rides per service hour. So it takes into account that you have a lot less trips on the Hope service. And then we've used an average fare of $1.55. So that's actually assuming that you have about a $2 fare. And that won't necessarily be the case, but at this point we wanted to start assumptions low to give you a conservative figure in terms of your total cost. So if the fares are higher than $2, we'd expect to have a little bit more revenue than this. If the ridership is higher, you'd expect to have more revenue than this $3,700. And so what we've done is we've taken the local share of costs, which is approximately 47%. I think the share is about 53% from local, 47% from provincial. And then we have discounted that revenue from your local share to come up with this figure here. So yes, if the revenue is higher, you benefit more because obviously it offsets your costs. One thing to note on this is that when we increase the second option, so there'd actually be more service hours associated with that second option, we kept the ridership estimate the same, assuming that it wouldn't necessarily, in a conservative estimation, increase your ridership dramatically, just again because we wanted to give you conservative figures so that you know, if you do receive greater ridership, you receive greater revenue, then that's great news come next year.
And if we have less ridership,
then then this sum would be a little bit higher. And one thing to note is that within the budget or the bylaw that has been approved, there is a little bit of buffer there in terms of years for this to progress. in terms of inflationary costs for the transit service itself. So it may be more that it would affect the number of years that this could progress without going back to the bylaw that's established.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Erickson. Councillor Medlock and Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're having a meeting with the Seabird Band. I think it'd be great for all of the First Nations along Highway 7 to share in the benefit of this service. So if they are interested in taking part, do they enter into the MOU? Like what stage of the process do they engage?
Do you want to speak to it?
So basically what we've done with other First Nation bands within the region for our transit services, they become a revenue funder. So basically we collect money on a revenue side, not as a partner side.
Okay.
So that goes directly to the revenue, so it reduces your tax burden to the residents overall. So,
Okay.
so we keep them out of the partnership side, so they're not really a local funding partner, because we have no way of taxing them anyway.
Right.
So we just contract the service to them.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess you have conversation with them, inform them on the process, the routes, and they make decisions then whether they want to join on board or not. Okay, that's great. I hope that they can see the benefit of it, because it would be. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
For the maintenance of the infrastructure and stuff like that, is that all accounted for in the 149 of our share costs for the infrastructure that's going to be put in, and the maintenance of it as well?
Thank you. That was a very good question, because I didn't speak much to it within the presentation itself, other than to say that the infrastructure on the ground is generally the responsibility of the local partner, because it's usually within your jurisdiction. So if there are any stops on MOT Island, that's dealt with them. But for the stops that would be within Hope itself, this is from an operational perspective, so it doesn't include for any costs associated with an installation of a pole and a flag sign, the installation, if you wanted a shelter in the future of a shelter, although I should say that we do have a shelter program where we cost share some of the shelters that we have on the program that we offer. If there's any requirement for painting, line painting, or a drop curb, or raised platform for accessibility, then that does then become under the local partner in terms of.
Thank you.
Councillor Dowd.
Thank you. Through you, just one other question, and I'm not quite sure how to frame it, so bear with me. Can you explain any regional transit tax that might be applicable to the District of Hope and taxpayers?
Can you maybe define that a little bit better?
No, I'm not quite sure I can actually define that. Like, so
Okay.
would there be a, I mean, I actually don't know what I'm asking, other
Sure.
than, is there a regional transit tax that would be applicable to the District of Hope?
No. What we do is we have a bylaw now that we can tax the residents of Hope on a whole through the regional district taxation system that'll pay for this system. So we don't have like each function that we have in the regional district is very explicit. So we only charge the users of that system as a taxation. So we don't charge Abbotsford residents, for example, to subsidize the Hope service, and vice versa. We don't tax Hope residents to subsidize the FEX.
So this cost here of $150,000 is our cost that we would be, that the taxpayers would be taking on responsibility for, and no additional tax from the region.
That's correct.
Mr. Podolsky and then Councillor Miller.
If I can, and mechanically, what that'll look like is the subscription portion of the municipal tax for the FERD will just be increased by that amount.
That's right.
I also have a quick question, if I can. When can you confirm when the provincial government would be able to pay out on option 2 if that were selected? Because of course, we have to adopt the financial bylaw by May 15th.
So I believe it may be the 21st or the 23rd of February that the announcement's made, and I can't remember the date on top of my head. However, because then there is the potential that the ask from local partners may exceed, as in all local partners around the province that are asking for expansion of transit service. And that ask may exceed what's within the provincial budget. We're very close at the moment. We're just looking at that right now. And we may need a week or two after that to be able to refine what that looks like, go out and speak to local partners, and so it's dependent upon what that approval looks like at the end of February. I would give us a little bit of time after that to be able to confirm for certain whether the funds are available.
That would work.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you. I think, I'm not sure if I'm putting words in Councillor Dible's mouth or not, but I know that there's been some concerns about an additional fee on the gas pumps in town to pay for this, and similar to Metro Vancouver's, as far as I know, that goes as far as Eldergrove. But yeah, so you confirm that there's nothing like that, it's all through regular taxation.
Nope.
Yeah, thank
Not
you.
yet.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for coming. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5A. Report from Mr. Bortolowski pertaining to the Cascade Lower Canyon Community Forest Draft Revenue Sharing Policy. Mr. Bortolowski.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce Mr. John Mason, who's a director. In fact, he's one of your directors on the board. Okay, make an adjustment here. You will remember that the three founding partners, way back when, Yale First Nation, the District of Hope, and the Fraser Valley Regional District established and set up this community forest with a mission to provide an economic, a social, and a cultural legacy to those communities. In essence, provide tangible regional benefits. Those benefits would include things like revenue or funds to share amongst and between the communities developed from the sales of lumber products and value-added products, provide for recreational opportunities and support recreation within the footprint of the community forest, and ultimately economic development through the provision of jobs related to the operation directly of the forest, but potentially more value-added, i.e. processing the wood, starting perhaps at the artisan level, small scale level, and then perhaps growing it within the region supported by the community forest. A new board was installed in 2015 after some difficulties, and these difficulties I think were well covered. And one of the missions of the new board was to improve the processes and the functioning of the board, and also relations with the three shareholders. So if you go on the web page now, the CLCCF.ca or .ca, you will see things like policies. You'll see records, minutes, board meetings, all that stuff. So we've very much professionalized it to ensure there's transparency throughout for everybody. Right now we have developed a lot of policies referencing governance, operations. We're moving on developing and finalizing the finance policies for the boards, and ultimately, well not ultimately, but clearly one of them is how do we share the revenues as part of building that legacy. Previously the board had no policy that was endorsed by the partners. So monies were given out, and people didn't always agree with the criteria that were developed as far as who was eligible to receive the funds, how much they were eligible, and how they actually got the money, and when. So what we're moving forward with now is to develop and finalize this policy and get them endorsed by the partners that would essentially remove the board ideally from the detailed granting of monies. So if you have the policy in front of you, you can see that it's developed that essentially when the forest operations can allow for a disbursement of revenues back to the partners, i.e. not required to support ongoing and sustainable operations, then it's envisioned we would essentially dole out a third of those revenues to each partner. So hence politically, for example, the District of Hope would take on, i.e. you, the task of deciding within guidelines who to give the money to and when. So it would be much like someone coming for a grant and aid, essentially the same thing. We have on the draft policy here on page 204, which is page 50 of your agenda, proposed a three-way division with some guidelines. So I'd just like to explain this to you, and again, we're only seeking endorsement in principle, because the details will be very similar, but not necessarily exactly. So this draft envisions Yale First Nation, for example, getting their third, and if they choose to, there would be a joint legacy fund, which they could allocate 25% to. And that joint legacy fund would be a fund that all three partners could save or contribute to in any year. For example, it would be a regional import, so bigger than just us. They, because of their particular status, then would take 75% and deal with it as they wish with their First Nations peoples. District of Hope and the FBRD, we see them both being the same in that, again, they would participate in the joint legacy fund. But we also categorize these out, in essence, to help, I guess, guide councils and FBRD boards' decisions. But these are subject to change, obviously. The youth and seniors, 25%. Regional community at large, 25%. And arts, culture, and heritage and recreation at 25%. So what's key to note here is that we are not looking for industrial, commercial, or business organizations to be eligible for funding. So this would essentially be almost a non-profit thing. And that's detailed in the draft policy again. The board needs this, and I believe, and we on the board believe the shareholders need to do this as well to ensure there's certainty in the process moving forward. Because there are three problems, and it's mentioned they're mentioned in the report. We want to avoid political issues moving forward. Clearly the problem for the board is we're not accountable politically, but you are. And you three, the Yale First Nation, District of Hope, and the FBRD are the three partners. Second, it will make the board's life very difficult. And in fact, we may not have the best information as to who really requires the funds, should we have to actually do the detailed dispersing of the funds, decide who gets them, when, and how much. And finally, quite frankly, there's been a bit of a delay. We now have the community forest up and operating. We're not at a point yet where we want to necessarily disperse funds, but we want to be prepared in the next few years. When we're in that position, we'll have this policy in place, there will be certainty and no surprise, and we can reduce friction and political issues, as it were. So I'm ready to entertain questions, but again, the intent is to seek your endorsement for the general principles of the draft. Some of the details may change, but it will see the three partners essentially get the money with a few guidelines, but it'll be your decision.
Well, it sounds like it certainly reduces ambiguity and adds fairness to the process, so I'm quite excited about this draft. Councillor Medlock, Councillor Erickson, please.
Thank you. So the same policy would be going for adoption by both Yale First Nation as well as the FBRD, right?
That's correct. FBRD will actually get presented, Mr. Kenny is going to present this later this month to the FBRD.
And then on the first page of the policy, so just trying to understand the process, it says distributions shall be at the discretion and timing of the CLCCF board and will be guided by this policy. That's when distributions of funds in excess of operational expenses and need, right? That's what they're talking about there.
Correct.
And then item B there says that the fund disbursements by the legal partner to a third party. So does the board of the CLCCF have any say at all into where the funds will go? Or is it, once it's in the hands of Yale, FBRD, and Hope, is it become this group that decides, or is it the partners from that represent us?
Yes.
It would be you.
Okay.
So if you endorse the policy and then the final policy comes through with some guidelines, for example, a percentage for youth, your discretion.
Yeah, whatever the guide,
Yeah,
according to the
essentially,
guidelines, but it would be this group of people here, or council.
this esteemed group of people right here.
Sure. Okay, I'm okay with that, I just wanted to be clear, because the way it happened previously was the board of the CLCCF was the ones that were making the disbursements and the decisions, so that's taken away from that. Understood?
Sounds very good. Counselor Erickson?
I understand you.
Okay, yeah,
One last question.
okay.
If I could. I don't know if it's a question you can answer, but do you have any idea what kind of revenues are expected and when? I know that there's some, maybe a bit of an update there.
You're correct, I cannot. However, the AGM is upcoming and we'll be in a position to give you a better financial picture.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Very much appreciated, and I guess the thought would be we should get a motion to endorse that.
Move endorsement of the draft policy.
Councillor Medlock, moving, Councillor Stewart seconding. All those in favor? Contrary? Thank you. And on behalf of council, Mr. Mason, thank you for your service on the board. I know sometimes volunteering is a thankless job, but
It's very good.
it's much appreciated. Yeah, very much appreciated. Okay. Moving on, I guess, to mayor and council reports. Actually, we had a, did we have a vote on that yet? Did we have a vote? We did not have a vote on the motion? We did? Okay. See, I'm still in a different time zone, yeah.
You could under committee reports, rising report from committee of the whole.
I was gonna put on no other pertinent business, but we can do that too. Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's not a bad point, we'll do that before we forget. That is pertaining to our committee, committee work earlier in the evening. And during the committee meeting, as many of you in the audience recall, there was a motion passed at the committee level speaking to some of the architectural drawings that we looked at pertaining to the Station House project, and also a recommendation that the committee recommend to council to allocate $25,000 of the 2017 capital funding to the Station House to allow staff to proceed with the project as we discussed it. So do we have a motion to that effect?
So,
Okay.
Second.
Councillor Dybel, Councillor Smith.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Through you. What's the 25,000 going to be used for?
That's to secure a cost consultant to price the building, as well as have a surveyor update the survey for the site to develop a site plan.
So the survey has been done though, hasn't it already? Highways did the survey before we got the property.
The survey is not up to date on the site. It doesn't have elevations on it, and it doesn't include the new additions to the building. Well, actually the elimination of one portion of the west side of the building, and the architect requires the new support posts be part of the survey.
Because what I'm wondering is, you know, we all have 40,000 approximately for the architect to do this work. And now we're putting another 25,000 in. So we're gonna be getting near $300,000 before we even start the building.
The $25,000 is just a budget number. I haven't received a cost from the cost consultant to date. A sidebar conversation with the architect indicates that we shouldn't be anywhere near the $25,000, but it's a placeholder for now, so that you know, we wouldn't have to come back to council repeatedly to increase the allocated 2017 budget at this point.
So my next question is, why don't you get a couple contractors bidding on it? That wouldn't cost anything. The 3 contractors, they'd give you an actual firm price. Because after you draw the plan up, then you can get, the cost consultant's gonna give you a price, so those 3 bidders to do the job, they're gonna give you a price.
It depends on how we want to manage the project. If we want to hire a construction manager to manage the project, if we want to go to a general contractor through tendering process. That hasn't been determined yet.
Okay, motion's on the table. Additional comments? All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries, thank you. Okay, just a couple things under mayor's report and then off to council reports. Everyone has noticed Councillor Crockett's not here tonight, and very unfortunately, her mother passed on, just 4 days ago now, 4 days ago. And so I had a couple of little brief meetings with Councillor Crop, see how she was doing, and obviously she's holding her own, but it's, anytime you lose a parent, it's a tough slog, so I'm sure she'll be back for the next meeting. But she is very distraught about it, obviously, and I guess I met Donna's mom, Councillor Crop's mom, about 23 years ago when I was on council the first time. She's quite a nice lady, and I kind of figured out where Donna gets her bold, no-nonsense approach from. I think it came from her mom and her dad, so I'm sure our thoughts and prayers are with her during this difficult time. I'd like to as well issue thanks to Councillor Crop for helping out in late December for the last week and a bit when I was gone, and then also to Councillor Erickson for being acting mayor for a couple of weeks here in January. I had the opportunity, and it doesn't happen very often, to go to Africa for a trip, so I visited a couple of friends there. I was able to do some volunteer work at an orphanage and helped paint a friend's house, and did various things that were definitely a learning experience. I went to Uganda and Kenya, and I got a seat sale on the flight, which was kind of nice a couple months before. And then when you get there, it's actually quite inexpensive to travel there, so it wasn't a super pricey venture, but you definitely get jet lag when you return, as I have found. So worthwhile. I will be putting together a little slideshow of sorts, so if anyone wants to hear more about it, I'm certainly more than happy to talk about it. It's obviously not a direct function of council, but it's something that was very interesting to me. I came back with a renewed sense that we are very deeply blessed as residents of Hope, all the things that we have in our community available, opportunities we have, and the safety and so on and so forth. There's no minimum wage in Uganda, so there's people that work hard 16 hours a day for 50 cents US. That's how it works. And there's obviously others that make a lot more, but it's just a very surreal experience going there, and worthwhile for sure. So thank you, Councillor Erickson, for filling in the early part of January. Much appreciated. Councillor Smith, we'll start with you for councillor reports.
Mine's pretty simple. Happy New Year to everybody. I think this is the first time we set at the table this year. I want to give kudos to the Public Works. I know there's a lot of kind of anniversary or whatever you want to call it, that people don't always think it goes smoothly, but I think that Public Works did a great job this year for their first snowfall, for how large it was. And everything else that went along with it there. I know there were some complications and stuff, so I think they did a very good job, and I'm pretty sure Kevin's probably passed that along already. We've gotten a couple emails from local residents, so, which is good. It's nice to hear that good news sometimes instead of always bad news. So, good job on that, and other than that, I have nothing to report. Pretty slow.
Good. Nothing to report. Happy New Year to everyone, and I'll echo Councillor Smith passing along to Public Works. I know it's we don't think about Public Works being out there Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. We're all at home enjoying our family, so I very much appreciate the work that Public Works did this year. Unprecedented amount of levels of snow. So thank you, Kevin, and your crew for that, so appreciate that, and great work on clearing the roads and keeping the roads safe. And yes, we have issues with potholes and whatnot, but to be expected, I think, given the amount of snow and ice and salt that needed to happen, but thank you for that. Other than that, looking forward to a great 2017. Less than 4 weeks, I'm going to be a grandma, so looking forward to that. So if I'm not here at the next council meeting, you might know where I might be.
So if we call you Grandma Dilo, would that be appropriate?
It would actually be Nana. Call me Nana.
Nana Dilo, okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Councillor Stewart.
Okay, so I attended the Golden Angels meeting, and I did a little blurb here, and it's going to seem really strange after the whole sidewalk clearing conversation that took place. If I'd have known we could ask for $40,000 and get the sidewalks cleared, this might be a different report. So there was some discussion regarding the snow removal policy, and they were very pleased with the way Public Works dealt with the snow this year, and saw a definite improvement over previous years, so that was a good thing. But when I left there, I kind of felt like their biggest concern is the senior citizens that can't clear their sidewalk due to physical reasons or the ability to be able to pay someone to clear their sidewalk for them. So as a person with disabilities, I understand that there's a little bit of shame involved in having to ask for help. So I reached out to staff and I said, you know, perhaps council and the mayor may have some ideas in the community that people who you know, had some impairments to being able to clear their own sidewalk could reach out, and maybe there's an organization that would volunteer to help them, or some way they could reach out. So staff let me know that Fraser Health has awarded some money for a volunteer coordinator in the community. So at this point, I'd like to congratulate the Read Write Society for taking on that contract and being the source for volunteers to be able to go and just let them know that they're available to help, what their skill might be or what their availability might be, as well as this database that they'll put together. Organizations that require volunteers can contact the database and enroll people that are looking for ways to volunteer. So the example I was given was that the Better at Home group that does help senior citizens, perhaps they have 2 people who can shovel snow, but they require 10 people. They can go to this database and find the additional people and then go out and help. So I thought that was kind of exciting in the event that we don't have $40,000 for sidewalk removal, that perhaps the volunteers that are interested in helping seniors clear their sidewalk, they could get involved. This is a program that is slowly rolling out with the Read Write Society, and we look forward to seeing them progress in the spring. But they've asked me to mention that if you're a healthy volunteer that's looking for ways to give back, please don't hesitate to go see them now. You don't have to wait till the spring to be of service. And also attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting as the liaison for council, and I'm happy to report that it was a very good meeting. Lots of people had attended, positive, confident way of moving forward, and they had some conversations about policies and bylaws and how they can move forward from here. They also set out a list of things that they might want to do this year or plan to do this year, and put your roller skates on, it's going to be a busy year. I really look forward to the conversations that they had, and I think they've got a really good year ahead of them. There was some talk about a quarterly newsletter and all sorts of great fun things coming up with the Chamber of Commerce. So that was really good. Also going to be attending the LGLA Leadership Forum on February 1st to the 3rd in Richmond. And it's starting, keynote is I'm right and you're an idiot, so it should be a really fun and lighthearted conference, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. And just Happy New Year to everyone, and thanks again to staff for all their hard work over that Christmas season. It was, I'm proud to be part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stone. Councillor Medlow.
That was quite the report.
I'm sorry. There was more, I couldn't read it.
It's been a long time since we've met, and a lot has happened, but I really don't have much to report outside of there's an Advantage Hope meeting tomorrow that I'll be going to. I always wish though those meetings were before council meetings so I could report all the good things they do right after, but 2 weeks' time at our next council meeting I'll be able to report on Advantage Hope's ongoings. That's all I have.
Sounds very good, thank you. Councillor Ferris?
Sure. I met with the ratepayers first week in January, and they were discussing, there were actually quite a bit of discussion on the food bank. Now the food bank is split up, I think, where Yale and Boston Bar Food Bank is quite empty, and they're really struggling to help in their community. And so they're going to be working on some way of trying to help Yale and Boston Bar with trying to figure out how to get their food bank up and running better. And I had a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce again too, and Then Ray Cervini at Canyon Cable approached me last week, and he asked me if I could ask the town if he could fix the bank up on his side of the road, like the bank on the left-hand side of the road was fixed up with the train, the carving for the CN guy there. He said he'd like to, but he'd have to take a few trees out, the little small little trees. He's got on his property, he's got big trees, but he said there'd be a few trees having to take out there. He would do it at his cost. He put, I think, 2 carvings up. He said he'd like to have that done soon, first in the spring, if he could do that. And I said, well, I'll present it in my talk and see. I don't think we would have any opposition to someone beautifying that part of the town. He said because it would actually look nice, a little thoroughfare going through there with some really,
Very good.
putting sprinkler systems in and so that the shrubbery will be watered. Sounds like he's gonna do a nice job, but he said a couple carvings. He said, be to present it, maybe you can get back to him, John, on that.
I will
See if
call
there's
him tomorrow
anything.
morning.
Sure. He
Sounds
said
very good.
he was concerned about taking a few trees out that are on the town property. It's on the hillside there.
We'll get it done.
Okay, that's all I have.
Sounds very good, and I'd like to, echo the comments about Public Works. I heard very few complaints and lots of thumbs up on email. When I was gone, I was very impressed with, and also the understanding of the public. I think the majority of people recognize that with the large snowfall, it does take a while to deal with problems. And most people were very respectful and understanding of that, so that was good news.
I want to add in mine real quick, because what Councillor Erickson said with the one carving that wants to go up, it's, one of the carvings is actually Hope Brigade Days carvings that he wants to put up on there. It was dedicated to get done for the fallen loggers in town, for the one that got damaged outside of Ray's, but he currently repaired his and got his put back up, and we want to put up another display, which Hope Brigade Days has, so that's one of the carvings that would be put up in that part of it, so.
That's excellent. Sounds very good. So I guess under item 8, A, B, and C are all related. So Mr. Gill, if you would like to speak to those 3 items, that would be great.
Okay, no worries. Your Worship, Honorable Council, the report that was presented by staff is in regards to the property at 20295 Kettle Valley Road. The report represents an official community plan amendment, rezoning, geotechnical hazards development permit, and a flood erosion development permit. Staff felt that taking one report would be beneficial as these development applications interrelate with one another and it creates efficiency. The applicant's immediate goal is to build a secondary dwelling to eventually, sorry about that, to eventually subdivide the parcel into 2 lots. The contemplated secondary dwelling is permitted under the current limited use zone, contingent upon a successful OCP amendment and rezoning to a country residential CR1 zone. The parcel will be able to be subdivided into 2 lots, in which case the secondary dwelling will become the principal dwelling of the newly created lot. Right now, under the current L1 zone, a minimum parcel size for subdivision is 39 acres. The current parcel is 14, and thus that you cannot subdivide any further without going through a rezoning. The CR1 zone was picked in the sense it's progressive for the area because the properties across the street are also designated CR1, and then the closest neighbor to the west is a RS1 zone property.
Okay. Sounds pretty simple, the whole thing. So maybe I'll read out the motion for item 8A first, and then we can put that on the table and discuss that if necessary. Official Community Plan Bylaw 1383-2017 pertaining to 2295 Kettle Valley Road. Potential motion here that District of Hope Official Community Plan Bylaw number 1383-2017 be given first and second reading in order to redesignate the property legally described at 20295 Kettle Valley Road from limited use to country residential. And further that the public be notified in accordance with the District of Hope application procedures and public hearing information meeting procedural bylaw number 1393, the Local Government Act and the Community Charter. And further that the Council of District of Hope has considered the duty to consult regarding the official community plan bylaw number 1383-2017 in concurs with the Director of Community Development that consultation be undertaken with the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure, the District of Hope Director of Finance, and District of Hope Director of Operations. A motion to that effect, please. Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Second, Councillor Stewart. Motion's on the table. Councillor Smith?
For the proposed access easement, would there be an easement agreement, I guess, between the two properties once subdivided? Or would there have to be?
Your worship, through you, under the approving officer's hat, I gotta make sure the subdivision provides access to both property owners. When it comes down to the actual easement agreement, it is a civil party agreement between the two parties.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Anderson?
So this is limited use right now. Do they have to get, if we're changing from limited use to country residential, do you not have to get a geotechnical study done on that whole area, all the way down the river?
Your worship, through you, technically when it comes down to subdivision, it's for the subject site. There has been a report already conducted. That was done prior to even making application because staff felt that there could be a hesitation from council for approving it because we don't know what the risk threshold would be for both the geotechnical and the flood erosion end of things.
So is that taken care of?
That's been completed, yes,
Complete?
yes.
Because I understood if it was limited use, whoever did it would have to do the study on the whole river all the way down the river for all the lots that have been sitting there for all those years. Just not the one at the pole. I understood. That's the way it was to be done.
Your worship, through you, if the lands were identified as in a, let's say, a avulsion hazard, like the golf course lands are, and someone wanted to prove that what we have for reports for the creation of our floodplains, then in that regard, yes, there could be a full study done for the whole area. However, when it comes down to the hazard assessment, they look at data, climatic data for the whole area. They don't look at just one simple area of the lot. They look at it through the whole river system.
So is that applicable to everything all the way downstream?
In this case, no, it would not be as per what's been recommended, and the risk thresholds are only for the subject property. It would not apply to any other properties downstream.
Okay, thank you. Motion's on the table. All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries. Okay, the second part of the three-part process here, the zoning amendment bylaw number 1384-2017 for the same property at 20295 Kettle Valley Road. Potential motion, the District of Hope zoning amendment bylaw 1384-2017 be given first and second reading in order to rezone the property at 20295 Kettle Valley Road from limited use to country residential, and further that the public be notified in accordance with the District of Hope application procedures, public hearing information, meeting procedural bylaw number 1393, Local Government Act and Community Charter. Motion to that effect, please. So moved. Thank you. Councillor Medlock, Councillor Erickson, moved and seconded. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you very much. And the third motion to this three-part process pertaining to the development permit. Recommendation that the flood and erosion hazards development permit and geotechnical hazard development permit be prepared in order to support the subdivision and the immediate development of a dwelling unit on the newly subdivided lot on the property at 20295 Kettle Valley Road, and further that upon receipt of an acceptable certified report from a qualified professional confirming a site-specific safe building location for a single-family dwelling and all necessary accessory structures, authorize the Director of Community Development to endorse the development permit and require covenant documents, and further that for purposes of the development permit validity period, the conditions of the development permit shall expire on January 23rd, 2019, and further that for the purposes of any associated building permit substantially started, any construction shall mean the completion of a required geotechnical protection works. So Councillor Erickson moving, do we have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Dybel seconding. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Contrary, motion carries. Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Item 9A, correspondence. Motion received, please.
Second.
Counselor Diamond moving, Counselor Smith seconding. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Question period for items relevant to the agenda. Anyone has any comments pertaining to the agenda? Okay. Thank you very much. Next council meeting will be February 14th. Valentine's Day. See? Totally suitable to all these single people.
Hallmark holiday. Oh, good for you. Okay, she got Hallmark holiday. Show you that.
Okay, move to adjourn and go to the in-camera meeting, maybe a 5-minute break. Okay, Councilor Erickson, Councilor